Hi guys, in this video we're going to go over the sum function. Before we do that, go to excelvbasequel.com. There's almost 30 hours of free video lessons. If you want to learn everything about Excel from the basic to the advanced level, you can learn it all there. You could become an expert. Put your email in here and you could receive emails when a new free video goes up. And contact us on this website too. Okay, so let's go to the Excel workbook that we've been using. If you haven't seen any of these videos, what we're doing, um, we have some dummy data here, like names and street addresses of people, their city, states, zip codes, country, email, all kinds of data that you would encounter in the real world. And what we're doing over here in this yellow highlighted section is starting to go through all the functions in Microsoft Excel so you can be an expert. So you can do nested if statements and simple if statements. And we put up videos on all this. So if you go to Excel VBA SQL, you'll see here there's a video library for Excel that goes over all these things, and there's a video library for VBA. So just to remind you guys that that's what we're up to. We're gonna bring you up to the level, to the advanced Excel user level. So let's continue that. In this video, we're gonna go over the sum function, and let me just delete this column here because we're done with the logical functions. So logical functions were like the if statements, and, ors, and the not functions. Now we're going to get into something called the mathematical functions. So let me just write that here. And these functions, the mathematical functions that sum things, they're probably the most frequently used functions in Excel. So to know these is super important. So let's go over this function called sum. Okay. And to do that, I'm going to go to a worksheet here, and I'm just going to rename it. Click a worksheet. I'm going to rename this math functions. Okay, so what does the sum function do? So all the sum function does is add numbers. That's all it does, it add numbers. So let's write a simple sum function. So we put the equal sign, then we do sum for sum, and then we could just sum a number. And you could see here this little gray box pops up, and it says, okay, what numbers do you want to sum? So if I put in here 10, and then if I just sum 10, I could do that, and it'll return 10. So there, it returned 10. What if I have multiple numbers? I could put in 10 plus 20 plus another 10. And I could do this and keep going. So if I hit enter now, all it did was sum those numbers. So that's pretty normal. That is summing constants. So these are constant numbers, 10, 20, and 10. You can also sum what's called a range. So let's say we have more numbers here, 100 over here, I have 300 over here, I have 1,000 over here, and let's say I want to put, what is the total here? So if I insert a row here, I could sum all these up by just doing this. I could just select these cells. And now I have a range of cells from A3 to A6. That's my cell range. And I could put a sum function around that range. And you see it highlights the blue range of cells. And if I hit enter, it summed them all up, 540. So what this does now is you're able to sum a range. And the range can go all the way out. It could be anything. It could be a rectangular range. So I could put numbers out here and over here and down here. And all I have to do if I want to sum all of these numbers is I just change this range. I just go over here, I drag this out to make the range bigger, and now if I hit enter, it's going to sum up all the numbers in this range. So the sum function can take a range, a rectangular range or a square range, whichever one you want, and it could sum all the numbers in there. So if I hit enter, there's my sum, 11,640. Okay. So we see that the range uses cell references, right? So we have the range is composed of A3, which is the upper left right here. This is A3. That's the upper left corner of the range. And the bottom left corner of the range is D12. So here's column D, row 12. Here's D12. And this is the bottom left corner of the range. So these are cell references here. So intuitively, you would think that you can sum cell ranges, which you can. So let me show you how to do that. If you just want to sum cell A3, you can do that by just doing this, sum A3. And if you hit enter, you're going to get 40. Notice that A3 contains a formula, which is perfectly fine because the sum function here in A2, it's looking at the value in A3. So you could write formulas in all these other cells here. And as long as they return a number, you're gonna be fine. It just can't return an error. Watch this. Even if you put the number A here, it returns 0. So the sum function knows that this is a text value. Let's say if you type the word name, and it says I can't sum that, so it just returns 0. So you're fine until you do something like this. If you get an error like 1 divided by 0, that's going to return an error. So now you get an error, and when you try to sum this value, well, because it's an error, Microsoft Excel can't sum it, and it can't decide that it's a text because it's an error, doesn't know what to do, so it returns an error. So that's a little bit, I went on a tangent there, but just know that when you want to sum a cell reference or a range or whatever, you're going to be fine as long as you don't have errors in there. Okay? Besides, let's see. Let me just do something real quick here. I'm going to put constant. I'm going to put cell reference. And I'm going to put cell range. And I just want to do something real quick. I'm going to put the value equals sum, and I'll put 10. Let me just clear all this out. So there's a couple ways you can use the sum function, and that's what I'm going to show you here. First way is the first way we looked at, a constant. So sum equals sum and then 10. The next way, let's say you have a number here like sales, and there's 1,000, and then 4,000. Let's just say it's 1,000. You could do something like this, equals sum, and you could reference B6. So that's called a cell reference. You're summing a cell reference. Now, you could have another thing called revenue, and you could do 1,000 and 2,000 and 4,000, and then you could do commission, and you could do 300, 200, 100, and this sum here for a cell range, you can sum a cell range like this. Okay. The next thing you could put in these sum functions, besides a constant and a cell reference and a cell range, you could put a formula. So let's try this. You could do something like, let's see. You could do something like this, equals sum if 1 is greater than 0, then 100, then 200, else 500. So we could use a formula in a sum function like this. You could write equals sum, and then inside the sum function you could write a formula, and you could write any kind of formula, using the logical functions that we already covered. If you don't know about the logical functions, go to the website, watch those. But you could write if statements, and you could write and statements, or and functions and or functions, and you could combine them like we did in those videos and do if functions with and functions and or functions, all kinds of stuff. You could do all that stuff. the point is, inside the sum function, you can write a formula. So that's what I wanted to highlight here. So let me just make this yellow, and let me also center this so it looks a little bit better. Okay, so we saw there's a bunch of different things that we can do with the sum function. Use constants, use a cell reference like this. You could sum a range of cells like that rectangular range. You could also use formulas in here. Crazy formulas if you want. However crazy you want to make them, you can make them. Because you can, the point is you can just use formulas. And then I'll show you one more thing, Boolean values. So what you can do here is you could do something like this, equals sum, and then you could put true. Now remember, when we did those logical videos, I mentioned that true evaluates to 1 and 0 evaluates to false. So if I hit enter here, if the word true, it's a keyword in Microsoft Excel, if I hit enter, it evaluates to 1. Okay? And if I do it again, sum true and true, then I get 2. And then I could keep going like this. I mean, the point is that you could sum Boolean values. If you ever wanted to do that, I don't know if you ever will, but you can. And what you need to just remember is the keyword false evaluates to 0. So if I sum false, it evaluates to 0. So if you're confused about these Boolean values, just think of it as what a if function returns. If 1 is greater than 100, what is that going to return? Well, remember, the if function returns a true or false. So if we hit enter here, oops, or actually, I'm sorry, the if function returns whatever value you want to return from it. I wanted to say the AND function returns 1 or 0. So apologize for that slip up. What I wanted to say was the AND function and the OR function return a true or false. The if function will return whatever you want it to return. Okay, and watch the videos all about that. So the if function can return anything you want. The AND function and the OR function return a true or false. So if you try to sum an AND function, you're going to get either a 1 or a 0. So we could do this, and we get 0 because 1 is not greater than 100. If I do 101, then I get the value 1 because this AND function here evaluates to 1, or evaluates to true, which also has the numeric value of 1. So all you need to remember is this. True evaluates to 1, and false evaluates to 0. So that's the Boolean value of the Boolean value of true is 1. The Boolean value of false is 0. So you could sum those. Not used too frequently. What is used most frequently? Well, this one here, the cell range. This is probably going to be used the most frequently in your daily work because you're going to have lots of data and lots of numbers, and you're just going to create a range and drag your range to sum up these numbers. The next most frequently is probably the cell reference when you sum stuff. So notice you can sum more numbers by doing a comma. So I could sum B6 and C6, and if I put another comma, I could do D6, and then you could add a constant if you want. And then you could add a formula if you want. I mean, you could combine all these things. So you could see it's very flexible, this sum function. It's very widely used. You need to be familiar with it if you're going to use Microsoft Excel, if you're going to become good at it. So let's do a real world example. It's pretty easy to understand. So let's do a real world example and try to get you guys up to speed on this. So you come into work and you have all this data. you have all these people. You have their zip code, their phone number, their date, and you also have their salary over here. So let's write a sum function that does something pretty simple. Let's just sum up their salary. This is a very common thing that you're going to do in the real world. And the question is, you have this column here called salary. It has all these people's salaries in it. What is the total salary? Let's say you work at a company. How much are you spending every year on salary? What is your cost? What is your employee expense, right? So what you can do, in the real world, what you would just do is just, put a header over this. This is one way of doing it. And you can just sum all these numbers up. Now, how do I do that? I'm just going to write equals sum, and I want to sum a range, right? So I could just do K4, and I could just I could drag my cursor all the way down like this. And what do I have? I have 100 rows. So I went all the way down. If I hit enter now and go back up, I have $27 million in employee expenses. So that function to return that looks like this. Equals sum K4 to K103. Now here's K4, and K103 is down like 100 rows. But all you did was, you select K4, you drag your cursor down, and you get a function that looks like that. Sum K4 to K103. And you can return the sum of all the numbers. Now, let's say you had 60,000 rows, 100,000 rows, 200,000 rows. How would you do it? Well, if you don't want to drag your cursor down, you can just remove the numbers in front of the column letters, like K4 and K103, and just put sum K colon K, and that is going to sum the whole column here. You see how the blue rectangle highlights the whole column. But let's see if we can do this. Sum K4 to K. No. Let's try this. That is going to return an error because there's a circular reference. So what can we do about this? So this is a real world example. The thing I want to show you here is that I don't like dragging my cursor down 100 rows or 60,000 rows or anything like that. I want to just do this, sum the whole column. Just give me all the values, sum all the values in that column. So if I do it like this, and I put the sum function right above the salary column, I get a circular reference. So what is a circular reference? It's just saying you can't get an answer because your answer depends on your answer is included in your calculation. So it creates a circle that you want to sum the column, but the column, the one of the numbers in the column is the answer to the sum in the column. So it creates a big problem. It's called a circular reference, and you can see that because what this function does here, you can look at it. These two cells here are causing a problem because I can't get an answer if my answer is in the question. So what can I do here? All I need to do is move this over here, and then I have my answer. Okay. So I can do something like this. This is how I would do it in the real world. I would make some more space up here by inserting some rows, and I would just drag this over here to make it look a bit more presentable. I could drag it all the way over to A1, and if my boss or someone says, what's the employee expense for our company? All I have to do is say, well, I'll put that value in cell B1, or cell B1, and I did that here. So now I don't get a circular reference when I do this, because if I scroll over to column K, it's summing up this whole column here, but I didn't include I didn't put my function up here right above it, so it didn't create a circular reference. So what it's doing now is summing all the numbers in this column, and I have my answer here, 27,702,163. So that's a real world example of the sum function. What I'm going to do here, instead of putting it over there, what I'm actually going to do is cut this and move it over here. So you guys can see with the mathematical functions what we're doing, right? So here we have our mathematical function. One of the first mathematical function we went over is a sum function. That's a pretty comprehensive example of the sum function. I'll finish up the video right now. Just remember, what you can sum are constants like this. You could sum cell references like that, or you could combine them with constants, however you want. You could sum entire ranges. And notice, I could put a comma here and sum another range. So you could combine everything, right? You could also sum formulas, because a formula is going to return whatever you want it to. Like an if function will return whatever you want it to. You could always sum the value it returns. A Boolean function, like the AND function or the OR function, will return 1 or 0. Because it evaluates the keyword true as 1 and the keyword false as 0. You could sum those if you wanted to. And that's pretty much it for the sum function, what it does. And then we took a look at how to use that in the real world. Well, someone comes to you and says, what's my total employee expense? And you could find that out real easily by just doing this. Sum K to K. K colon K. To sum all the numbers in column K. If you have 300,000 rows. If you don't want to do it like that, you can also just put, remember, K1 to K100 like this, if you had 100 rows, or however you want to do it. I just put K to K because it's easier. You don't have to drag your cursor. So that's it for the sum function. What I'm going to do is post this video on excelvbasequel.com, and more importantly, I put this worksheet with all this data and all these formulas. I put it there so you could download this worksheet so you could see how these things work and you could fool around with it. You could go through the videos and take that file and mess around with it and become an expert. You could take it to job interviews so you can show people, here's what I can do. I can do all these functions: not, if, and, or, some ifs, sums, and it has all the besides being able to download that file, you're able to download all the VBA code. So when you go to an interview, you could say, I can do VBA, I can write macros, and you could bring in code that can do all these VBA functions and stuff. If you don't know what VBA is, start here at this macro. What is a macro? And we'll show you what it is. And it's really powerful. You can do a lot with it. You can do amazing stuff with it. So go to the website, check it out, watch the videos, and put your email in here. Email me with questions, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks.